Okay, so welcome everyone. So we are on our week 4 this time, prayers and meditations by the Mother, and the collective prayer that we have for reflection today is February 1, 1914. So I would start to invite all of you, request all of you to begin one by one, share your reflections on your prayer, anything that you find resonating with, or anything that asked you to contemplate deeper. Yeah, one by one, maybe one we can begin to share.
Yeah, I can go. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Uh, okay. So I just slowly go over the prayer, the things that I like you said, I want liked or made me think more. First of all, this "Thou art everywhere." I remember I was in a Christian school, and in that the main prayer was "Thou who art in heaven." It made me realize for the first time that what a narrow vision that is, right? Like, and I used to say it every day, but it didn't strike me then that why would God just, reside in heaven? Why not everywhere or wherever, right? So that made me think. And then within and outside all. So I basically, this word omnipotent, we hear it a lot, we read it a lot, but I wondered if we actually identify with this omnipotent
I think some connection issue with Taru here. I hope she joins again. Let's wait for a moment. Yeah, okay, I can't see her here again. Huh. Yeah, Taru, are you there? No.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It logged me out and said to, reset my password for security reasons. I don't. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so can you just start again? I think that was the only the first line that we could hear, and after that we lost you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Uh, I was saying that
We're talking
basically
about omnipotence. Yeah.
yeah. So I was saying that it is such a amazing, I don't know, such a powerful, such a humbling thing, right? Like if I actually believed it truly that God is omnipotent. I mean, I don't think I would be able to live the way I do. Like he's everywhere. And I know this, and yet I don't know this. So somehow that was very interesting that how, I don't know, I think I know, and yet I'm not be able to actually live by that. So that was interesting. And then it was this intimate essence of all and remote from all. Like I found it really beautiful the way it's saying that, he intimate essence is such a it seems like such an intimate thing, right? Like really personal and stuff, and yet remote from all. Okay, in everyone, but untouched by everyone, different and same. Like, so again, it was beautiful. Then after this mass of substance put into forms perpetually destroyed and renewed. So that actually, again, I think it would be very common to get the vision of Gita, right? Like how Krishna had told Arjuna how things are going, but yet to somehow see it or read it again makes it more real. That how it's like, how we think we are special, and then how is mother referring to the whole universe, mass of substance, and that's what it is, right? And especially we believe that the Panch Bhuta, the Five Bhuta, and how you go back into that. So, but to read it was a bit touching. And then destroyed as soon as constituted. Again, we use this example, you also use it quite often, the bubble example, right? Like how life is like a bubble, okay, but it forms and it just bursts. And when I see a bubble in front of me, it actually seems like it really had no life. And yet, when mother says that, my life is a bubble, destroyed as soon as constituted. And, we do hear it, like when we talk, read about deaths, especially we hear that, right? This is like our birth is like just a blink kind of in the universe. And yet, I mean, I don't know, this prayer kind of made me realize the gulf between a lot I know or think and I'm actually be able to live by or fully have faith in. I don't know how to put it. Yeah. So after that, and I really love the way Mother has used the word imagine that they are permanent. Imagine apne mein, it's like, when we're talking to kids and all, and we say that, imagine that this would happen, the fairies would come and stuff, and yet we imagine that we are permanent. And I think we have discussed this often, that how the society or the way we are conditioned, we never want to think about death. Like, if somebody talks about it, other people hush them. If something happens in a family, people would want you to, quickly get over it and start living life just as it was, as if, what happened was just, I mean, a mistake and it would not happen to anybody else, which is very interesting. But again, imagine that they are permanent and then almost alike. Like, I, it's very interesting how unique we think we are, and obviously you see that again and again. Like, everybody is a mirror, but it was beautiful to again read it. Almost alike in their diversity and repeating indefinitely. Again, yeah, and the same desires, tendencies, appetite, and ignorant errors. Okay, it is like again, I think I say this a lot, how it's like if the factory is producing boxes, and that's how we are supposed to be, like everybody with a good career, with good education, with good English speaking skills, with a good future, good ambition, good wife, good kids, at least two of them. That how the society wants exactly a cooker cutted, like a cookie of mass production or something. So the same desires, yet we feel my desire is different, tendencies, appetite, and ignorant errors. Yeah, and then thy sublime light shines in a being. Yeah, so here it says, yeah, so but from time to time thy sublime light shines in a being. It again, it made me wonder that, a lot of times we see that things are happenings, like, more often than not than doings. So, again and again you wonder that what really is my role when the thing has to come from above, like the grace has to come from above. Like, yeah, I mean, I've heard that, okay, you have to still prove that you want it and stuff. Yet that line is very thin because it's his light that comes and he decides when he wants to come. So it was interesting. A little wisdom, a little knowledge. And in this, like the word disinterested, again, I feel that it's a word that I personally don't give that much attention to. And yet, you see that happening in your life, that the things somehow, the things that seemed really big start seeming small and small and small, and then it just seems like a drama. It seems like a, again, so it stood out to me, the disinterestedness and heroism. So how you need to be, like Kabir says, a surma, and that penetrates man's heart. Yeah, sorry, that Sublime Light also, it made me think of like Meher Baba, that book that we had read once about the God Speaks. That so many categories of even like this, I don't know what consciousness were discussed in that. You're on first stage, second stage, and the different kind of mystics and masters, different. So it was just, it took me there. I wonder how that could have that worked. After that, so this paragraph is what civilization, so-called civilization. We are supposed to be civilized. We are the, I don't know, supposed to be the highest in the food chain. We are supposed to be actually compassionate and, I don't know, the protector maybe of nature, and yet we eat who we are supposed to kind of take care of, protect. We burn the forest that gives us oxygen. Like the word civilized or civilizations, I personally find that very funny. Like I just feel ki how blind can you be towards your own self to actually call ourselves a civilized society. Civilized for whom? Like it just is. I think I stop with the civilization. And then the last thing, this selfish, mean, and foolish satisfaction. Like it's very apparent that it is, and yet it was nice to again be reminded or given that slap that it's, whatever we are kind of fighting for, like our struggles, they are selfish, they are mean, and they're actually quite foolish. And after that, the last line was really beautiful. Nothing much to say, but I adore thee in silence and listen to thee in a religious concentration. Like, adore thee in silence. Like, Mother says so much right here in the prayer, but ending it, although, this prayer also obviously feels like in Mother's silence as well, but doesn't have to say much. Everything is in silence and, yeah, religious. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Taru, so much. Yeah, Jyotsna ji, Chitra ji, if one by one you can also share your reflections.
I think Taru covered it all.
Yeah, is there anything that you want to share after that or nothing?
I basically felt that the regeneration and destruction which constantly occurs as a cycle of life, and like he says, perpetually destroyed and renewed. And each time an avatar comes, shows himself a little, uh, puts a little bit of, I mean, the people, we, what I say in Hindi, badhir people, we absorb a little bit, and then again we go back to our own old habits and ways, and then again the whole cycle is so slow because of our own inertia. So what Mother is saying, that we have to wake up and completely dedicate ourselves. So it's the same what Taru said.
Okay, thank you, Jyotsna ji. Chitra ji, would you like to share your reflections?
Yeah, Monica, yes. Actually, the first para, no, I turn towards the who art everywhere and within all and outside all. This is exactly from Isha Upanishad, actually. Exact verse is there. For even the first verse of Isha Upanishad is that Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagat. This Sri Aurobindo translation is all this is for habitation by the Lord. Whatsoever is individual universe of movement in the universal motion. And also the next word also the intimate essence of all and remote from all, That is also that fifth verse. That also denotes Tate jadi, Tanne jadi, Tad dure, Tadvantike, Tadantarasya Sarvasya, Tadu Sarvasyasya Vagyataha. That moves and that moves not. That is far and the same is near. That is within all this and that also is outside all this. So when I read this prayer, no, exactly these verses came to my mind actually. I wondered really how Mother brought this Isha Upanishads line, and as Taru shared that also that Gita, no, perpetually created and destroyed. When Sri Krishna showed his Vishwarup darshan like that to Arjuna, no, he got frightened. So the same thing she brought it here very nicely. But in between she mentioned about that divine love, no, that touched me a lot because it is special to Divine Mother, that love actually. And also the second para, the but for this one, but from time to time thy sublime light shines in a being. Yeah, that is the coming of the avatars. And also I see her a lot of I mean of her compassion towards the sorrowful humanity. No, it denotes the all these lines how she is feeling for the people. We are ignorant, and she wants to lift us up. Those compassion I can see from these lines actually. And also yeah, and also last her prayer, as usual that prayer gives last one, no, yeah. Oh Lord, eternal Master, enlighten us. Yes, though she said all are ignorant and every earth is very sorrowful, but this prayer again assure us actually, enlighten us again. It's giving lot of hope as usual. Mother's way of things like that always. Yeah, these things I contemplate upon. Yes, thank you.
Thank, thank you, Chitraji. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, Monica, one thing that Chitraji just said, the steps thing, like guide us steps. It again, kind of points towards that how each and every step that we take is important. It either leads towards or away. So it's not like a big picture, it's like every day, small picture. So that also was quite nice to
Yes,
again.
yes, yes. Bilkul, bilkul. Totally. Each step can be either lived in falsehood and or lived with truth. We always have a choice, and each moment is full of choice. And that is why it's like every moment we are in touch with eternity. So we cannot say that I am trapped in time, because every moment I am free either to follow the falsehood of the ego or to follow the truth, the guiding light of my own understanding, which is there also each moment. So when we say that the divine is everywhere, each moment, the essence of everything is divine. So even when we talk about falsehood, parallelly with the falsehood, the light of shining light of your own understanding is also present. But many of us, who have been on this path, also use this as a kind of a bypass, in the sense that they would say that if God is everywhere and he is the doer and he is doing everything, then why should I care? But the same very God has also given you this light of understanding, knowing that what is right for you, what is taking you in the widening horizons, and what is limiting you, what is suffocating you. That power of understanding is also be a part of the divine only. Why do we negate that, and why do we focus on a passive attitude in life? So yeah, now Shilpi has joined. I see Shilpi joining. So Shilpi, everyone has shared their reflections on the prayer. Would you like to share your reflections if you have the capacity? Yeah.
Yeah, Monica, in a few minutes, I should be able to.
Acha, ठीक है, ठीक है. So let me then I'll just kind of go over again, and Shilpi, whenever you can, you have the capacity, please do. I turn towards thee who art everywhere. So this is the intimacy mother feels with the divine. Usually whenever we are not able to go to some ashram, we are not able to go see the sunrise, sunset, we feel that we are, missing out on something, not able to go out in nature and feel the expanse. That is not the case here. She has such an intimate connection with the presence, knowing in certitude that you are everywhere. So even when I am in a prison, you are everywhere. So how can I be far away from you? Thee who art everywhere and within all and outside all. So why mother would say within and outside? Because we live in forms. We are so focused on living as bodies that we can talk about within and outside. Okay, so I can talk about within my home I feel suffocated, but in an ashram I don't feel suffocated. That is how we take life usually. We are so bound to boundaries and limitations. But this is so beautiful what mother shares here, that within everything and outside everything. And why would mother talk about within and outside? Because we live as forms, we live as bodies. So for us it becomes important to talk about within and without. For a person who is not living as the body, that person would not talk about within or without. For him, it is a practical reality that the divine is all that is. But for us, growing from our ignorance towards light, this is very important, that it is, again, Kabir says that ya ghat bhitar. He also has to say that is ghat ke bhitar, is body ke andar, there is this divine presence. Now it doesn't mean that the body ke bahar there is no divine presence, but a conscious living presence is present right here with me throughout, guiding my steps. Am I available to that intimate essence of all and remote from all? Now this is again, I think you already touched upon it, this is so beautiful. When we talk about psychic presence, when we have listened so many talks, Dr. Soumitra Basu talks about psychic presence, Dr. Alok Da, he keeps on sharing about psychic presence. So what is so important about the psychic presence? It is the intimate essence of all. It is the essential element that without which we cannot be. That which is the essence of my being. Right? So the essence, I can never be separate from the psychic presence. I may not be aware of it, but I will never be away from it. Why? Because this is who I am. It is my essence. Intimate essence and remote from all. Now why remote from all? Because it is not of the dimension of the matter. Dr. Soumitra Basu also says it's of the other dimension. It's as if it's, imagine that we talk about space. Okay, now I cannot say that the space is in a house. I cannot say that. Space has the house. Without the presence of space, the house cannot be. So space is essential to a house, and house is our body. So without the presence of the psychic presence, which is as good as, if I can relate to it, space, because space is untouched by the house which is there. Imagine that a tsunami comes and takes away the house. The space is untouched. Nothing happened to the space. And even when the house is there, no matter how dirty and dusty and full of drain that house is, it cannot damage the space. That is the beauty of this remote from all. It is untouched by my grief and sorrow and sadness and all the rewards and awards and all the murders I may have done in life. The psychic presence is untouched by that, just like space is untouched by the house which is there in that space. And that is why it would be wrong to call that there is a soul in the body. The soul has the body, just like space has the body, has the house. We cannot say that a house has the space, right? So that analogy goes here very well. The analogy of space and talking about our essence, the deep essence, the deep wisdom the light of knowing, the light of seeing, the light of understanding that we are blessed with. That is irrespective of the body. Center of condensation of all energies, creator of conscious individualities. Now, in absence of this, yes, Josna ji, you want to share?
No, I'm connecting from another device.
Okay. Okay. So this is the center of condensation of all energies, creator of conscious individualities, as if this is the nucleus. This conscious presence of awareness is the nucleus around which a psychic individuality develops. What is a psychic individuality? That whatever experiences I am having throughout my lifetimes, the richness of those experiences, only the richness of it is getting embedded in the psychic being. And what is the nucleus of that? The nucleus of that is this conscious presence. Without the presence of this conscious presence, the psychic individuality cannot develop. So this is the center of condensation of all energies, creator of conscious individualities, being aware of each and every part slowly of our being aware of each mastery that we may be worthy of having in this lifetime. All the movements of the being are noticed, are brought to conscious light of understanding. I turn towards thee and salute thee. Now, Mother is addressing to this animating presence in our being. Who are you through which my eyes are able to see? Who are you which makes my nose breathe? You who make my limb move. Mother is consciously addressing that presence. O liberator of the worlds, and identified with thy divine love, I contemplate the earth and its creatures, this mass of substance, the matter, put into forms perpetually destroyed and renewed. So matter will be destroyed and renewed. Energy cannot be destroyed, it just converts its forms. So today it may be manifested in form of a body, tomorrow something else, right? So this will be perpetually destroyed and renewed. But Mother is addressing the essence of this unchanging element of the being. And then Mother says, I am identified with thy divine love. So a union has already happened. What is a union? Union is a shedding of layers of ignorance where I know myself as love. So we talk about, just a second. We talk about getting love from people, we talk about love in relationships, we talk about wanting love in our relationships, wanting to be approved. Mother is talking of true love. What is true love? We often wonder about what is true love. Mother is saying that I am identified with love. Love is the essence of my being. I am love. When Mother talks about the transforming power of love, love is that witnessing presence in our being. Owing to the power of just sheer witnessing, things begin to change. I did not do anything. No doing happened. Just its silent observation, non-judgmental observation, a continued silent non-judgmental observation took care of all the actions that were needed in order to transfigure anything. That is the essence of our nature. हम जब ट्रू स्वभाव की बात करते हैं, who are we truly, our true self? Love is our true self. No one can give me love. Love would be then a spilling out of my own being. The more I am identified with my own loving presence, the more I am not identified with my thoughts, with my tendencies, with my patterns, it will be very easy for me to spill out that love, because that love will be not be a wanting love. That love will not be seeking validation, approval. No, कि मैंने तुम्हें दिया तुम मुझे दो. Why? Because I am like that. A flower is a flower is a flower. A flower cannot help but spread the fragrance. So you cannot help but spread that love out. Ooze that love out. Why? Because you are that. But as long as I am identified as my tendencies, as my thoughts, and as my feelings and patterns, this is the veil of ignorance that comes between knowing myself as love and knowing myself as tendencies. So this is the veil of ignorance that comes. No, I am not worthy of it. How can I be loved? No, 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 that is a very big thing to say. All these thoughts come in between. Yeah. So how to reach the right door? By seeing all the faults in our life. By seeing what is not me, I reach at what is me. If that is ever called, can be called as a reaching. Because I am already that. It's just that I am in a dream. I think that my story is me. I think that my relation is me. I think that my wants are me. I think my expectations and demands are me. So all these wants, demands, expectations, as if they are a dream, and living in that dream, I cannot realize who I truly am. So to wake up from a dream is the call of masters. Wake up from the dream. Wake up from the dream. You are not that what you think yourself to be. You are that which you cannot think yourself to be. So this is the call of masters and mystics all through centuries. This is why the veil of ignorance is called as an illusory, never-ending veil. Because sometimes in moments I'm there, and sometimes the veil of ignorance is so strong, as if I lose touch with all the love within my being. Because the veil is so strong, it appears at in moments. And in moments when I'm very contently, deeply satisfied with myself, there it appears so easy. There is no veil, there is no ignorance in that moment, and yet ignorance is never ending. So I cannot ever say that my task as a human being is over. I can never say that. I can never say I have realized who I am. Why? Because the veil of Maya can come back again. And that is why they say enlightenment is a myth. Because one moment you are enlightened, moment you are totally identified with your true self. In another moment you are dreaming. Yeah. So please, I just keep on, blabbering on and on and on. So unmute and share whenever you feel the need in between. Shreya, Shilpi, and those of us who were earlier also, sharing. Please feel free to share. Yeah. So what happens owing to how we live life? We begin to think that I am this permanent individuality. I am this body. I am this thought pattern. I am my expectation. I am my demand. So I try to preserve it. Here in this sentence, Mother says, this swarming mass of aggregates which are dissolved as soon as constituting, as Taru was sharing, like a bubble, so fragile as a bubble. My existence, Shan Bhangur, momentary, fragile, even if it is for 80 years. But in eternity, it is nothing. What is 80 years in eternity? What is 90 years in eternity? It's nothing. Yeah. And then when I consider myself as the body and I live as the body, I feed only the body, then what am I insecure of? I am insecure of letting go of the body. Because I imagine myself as conscient and permanent individualities, as if this is my reality. So when the body will end, oh my God, I will also end. So I have to preserve this. I have to preserve this. All the life insurances, the hospital trips, wanting to have all the scans done so that I am safe. For what? Even if I look at one day of my life, what is the quality of my life that I am living? Is it really worth saving? What is the contribution I am giving to even those 4-5 people around me, for example, or to my own self? So why would I want to preserve myself? And then slowly we, through these contemplations, we can get to that how on earth can I give so beautifully so that each day is enough in itself. That I am not always wanting and wanting and wanting from the universe. I am now ready to give, no matter how little I have, no matter how unworthy I may think of myself. Whatever little I may have, I will give. Why? Because this is what I have, so I will give. This is the gift of Lord to me, and this is supposed to be given. Whenever gifts are not spread around, they rot. So in a self-giving, I offer whatever little I have been gifted with. And then we realize it's not really little that we have been gifted with. We are gifted with really a lot, which can last a lifetime. So then all the sense of unworth can go take a shower. It's not needed anymore. Because unworth is also game of ego. You know, although people who are listening to this, and even when they're not listening, this sense of unworth, it is only a game of ego. Oh, what can I give? I am not worthy enough. How long can we live in that limitation? How long will we not know ourselves as the divine? And a divine would never say that I am unworthy and how would I give? A divine would just give and give and give and give. So are we ready to give? In whatever little way we can afford to. Only then our limitations will leave us, loosen grip over us. I cannot keep on waiting. Once my limitations loosen grip over me, then I will have a divine life. No, that would never happen. I will have to have a divine life right now in whatever manner possible, so that slowly all the tendencies and patterns will loosen grip over me, because I will not give them attention in my life. So this is where we have to begin each moment of our life. Each moment is eternity. Each moment is a lifetime. Either I am living for falsehood or I am living for truth. When I am living for falsehood, then I am always asking. Because I am a beggar there. I am ego. When I am not living for falsehood, whatever little I have, I will give. Without even asking for something in return. Why? Because it gives me joy to give. There is a joy in giving. And the joy itself is the reward. Karm hi phal hai. So the right action is the result itself. Right action is the reward itself. In right action, I am not waiting for a reward to come to me later in some time. And the very fact of our life is that we are always wanting and demanding in our relationships. Why? Because we are never indulging in the right action in our relationships. Whenever I am having a right attitude in relationships, the right attitude itself is a gift. So who wants the gift later that comes from the other person? I'm not even bothering about that. I have done my job. So owing to the fact that usually we are always involved in falsehood, living for the ego, that is why I wait for the approval to happen. I have given so much to that person. Why is that person or the world not giving me back? Because I never gave with the right attitude. I always gave through the ego. And the ego always is a beggar, so it wants something in return. But whenever in a right attitude something is given, then there is no want for anything in return. Why? Because I got my reward. My giving was my reward. I was enjoying the giving so much that I don't bother about the reward. That is the joy of living a life for the divine, which is a life for the truth, and which is a life for your own true self and not for the ego. This is the reward. So the path of surrender, there are no benefits of the path of surrender, because surrender itself is the reward. There is no divine you are going to reach anywhere, all of us, because yearning for the divine is the reward, is the divine. And there I can lay myself content. Wow, I don't want to run anywhere. I don't need to run anywhere towards future. Because this yearning itself is my gift. So there, all the running that we are doing in our life, wanting to be somebody in somebody's eyes, that ceases. That comes to rest. And again, mind me, I'm talking of one moment. In another moment, the ego may have the begging bowl again. This is the beauty of a moment of surrender. A moment lived in surrender is a moment lived in eternity. I am not bound in time in that moment. I have lived timelessness in time. That is the paradox of truth. Yeah? And then we were sharing, just coming at the end of the first paragraph, repeating indefinitely the same desires. क्या desire है? अरे तू मेरे को smile दे दे. क्या desire है? अरे तू मुझे कुछ बता दे कि मैं भी कुछ हूं. क्या desire है? अरे wanting to be fulfilled. Very limited, we so-called billions of human beings. Very limited content of desires. Wanting to be somebody, wanting fame, just wanting to be proven that I am also something. Same tendencies, loop में चली जा रही हैं, years after years. We don't bother to look at our tendencies. Same appetite, same hunger of the desire soul. And wanting to have the desire soul as the true soul. Arey bhai, yes, I understand that this is my expectation, but this is what I am expecting right now. So should not this be fulfilled? No, this should not be fulfilled. Why? Because you are not the desire soul. You are the true essence. The desire soul is just a pattern repeating itself year after year. Why do you want to be a pattern? Why do you not want to go through all the pain and find the divine strength within you, which is waiting to be witnessed? But we are so stubborn in our tendencies that we are stuck that I am the desire soul. I am the beggar begging in me. If you were the beggar begging in you, wouldn't you be fulfilled? Because you have begged really so much. How long would I continue to live as a slave of this beggar inside me? I don't want to live this life. It sucks. So this is a warrior spirit. Waking up to your own self, this is self-love. Saying no to the desire soul is self-love. Because when I say no to the desire soul, then I say yes to myself. When I say no to my expectation, then I say yes to myself. So I don't really have to say yes to my own self. I just have to say no to my tendency. It's in negation that I reach myself. Neti neti. So I see that I am expecting and demanding from some person. What do? I say, okay, this is the desire being in me and I don't want to give strength to it. So what do I do? What do I say? I say, I don't want to give you energy and I don't want to make any action which is following the dictate of the expectation. This is what we do. We do neti of the expectation. We do neti of the tendency. And hence, I say yes to my true self. Yeah. So anything so far? Okay. So I'll just go ahead then in absence of anything. But from time to time, thy sublime light shines in a being. Now, even in a person who is so-called plunged in darkness of ignorance, even there, we see that from time to time, something happens where we see that yes, there is a purity there. It may be a moment of a purity. It may be a moment of act of kindness. It may be a moment of self-giving, but it is there. And that is where Mother shares that from time to time, even when we keep on repeating this loop of ignorance, even there, from time to time, thy sublime light shines in a being who is even drenched in ignorance. Even there, you cannot hide the light of truth. Something or the other will happen that the light of truth will shine and radiates through him over the world. And then a little wisdom, a little knowledge, a little disinterested faith, heroism, and compassion penetrates men's hearts. So, through all these acts, which are actually divine in their own essence, purely divine, which are a reflection of our true self, they come from time to time. No matter how many times we may be marred with the ego, with the falsehood, even there the reflection can be seen. A little wisdom. Maybe although in my day-to-day life I am marred with my ego, but when a friend comes to me, I am able to suggest him some right suggestion. So that is an act of, the light of sublime presence. So I myself may be in drenches of ignorance, but a friend comes to me and I am able to guide him very wisely. How? Because that is the little light of the sublime presence within the being. Transforms their minds and sets free few elements from that sorrowful and implacable wheel of existence, the rut of tendencies, the rut of going on and on and on and on of my expectations and demands and desires from the world. We get a break from that rut whenever such an action happens, to which their blind ignorance subjects them. So that is the word, blind ignorance. If ignorance was not blind, it would not be really ignorance. Owing to the fact that it is blinding in nature, I don't even realize how on earth I fall into a trap so easily. The trap of my own ego. It blinds me. It puts as if, something in front of me I'm not even able to see clearly. And whatever I am able to see, I think that is the whole picture. So I'm very rigid in my idea then. When I would say, okay, this is what I can see, and that is what is the truth. I'm not even able to welcome that there may be something else that I may be missing. So the moment I am ready to see that, yes, there may be something else I may be missing, that itself is half lit ignorance then. That is half lighting of ignorance. That yes, I can see that I cannot see, but I can also see that something is obscuring my view. That itself is so beautiful. Many of us go through such experiences, where we are in trap of ignorance, we are going through a challenge, but I can clearly see that I am in a challenge. That itself is the light of the divine presence. Because how on earth would I be able to see that I am undergoing a challenge? That clarity is there. That wisdom is already half present. And it comes so obviously that we ignore it. We ignore completely. I am in a depression, but I can see that I am in a depression. Isn't that beautiful itself? That is the light of thy sublime presence. It is very obvious, but I would completely ignore it. My whole consciousness, where would it go? The darkness, the darkness, the darkness. I will not be able to see my own self looking at the darkness. Because darkness cannot look at itself. Only light can look at something else. Yeah. So this is again, a few reflections on blind ignorance. But how much greater splendor than all that we have gone before. How marvelous a glory and light would be needed to draw these beings out of the horrible aberration in which they are plunged by the life of cities and so-called civilizations. I think we already touched upon that shortly. We think that this is life. We think that living in my four walls and decorating the four walls is life. Is that really true? And if that was true, would not that be enough to bring me contentment? But I see that that does not bring me contentment. And when I get in touch with my true essence, then I see that whether I am in the four walls or whether I don't have any house, wow, life is beautiful. It does not matter. Life is life, whether lived inside the four walls or outside the four walls. All is life. The whole movement of existence is life. Life is not just sticking to the four walls, whether the four walls of my own mind or the four walls of my own house. एक बार घर खरीद लिया और वहीं सेटल हो गए. अरे भैया क्यों होना है सेटल? Anything that settles rots. Water, when it settles, it gets rotten. Mosquitoes, breed there. It becomes unfit for drinking. Why do we want to get settled? Why not ever remain unsettled in the external world and yet deeply settled within the being? Knowing that nothing on earth can unsettle me from there. Knowing myself as the true self and not the body. So even the going of the body will not be unsettling in nature. And that is what is referred to as getting the roots deeply in the heaven. Remaining rooted in the heaven, what we read in Savitri, that she was of the heaven. This world was alien to her. So her roots were there in the heavens. My roots are there and when we call heaven, heaven is not a place. Heaven is just the right place within the being. Heaven is the right attitude, the right light of understanding. So can I root myself in the light of understanding so that anything unsettling may come in nature and I will be in my immutable presence, that which moves not. Both are the games of the divine. So deeply settled as the Purusha, only then I can have the world as Leela. Otherwise, Prakriti will be playing havoc on me because I am not seated as the Purusha. So one has to bank oneself as the seeing presence because we are that. Even if we look at the factual histories of our own life, we will be able to see that in all the ups and downs of our life, who was I? I was able to look at the ups and downs of my life. So I was the witnessing presence. It's not that I'm creating it for myself. I'm not imagining myself as the witnessing presence. Even when I look at the whole lifetime, I see that all that I did was to look at all the ups and downs of my life and either get engaged or disengaged from it. So this horrible aberration in which they are plunged, in which we are plunged, knowing as life, this life of materialism as life, this is the horrible aberration. What a formidable and at the same time divinely sweet puissance would be needed. So Mother says, my God, this is a formidable task because I see everywhere we are plunged deeply living as the material existence and not living as something beyond the material existence. So this is a formidable task. And yet it is also a very Mother says at the same time divinely sweet puissance. It has to be very influenced. So it has to be very overpowering. This effort in this direction has to be very overpowering, overwhelming effort has to be there, with a lot of influence. Truth has a lot of influence. 2 words of truth will stay with you forever, even when 10 years have passed. That is the overbearing influence of truth. But this is needed to turn aside all these wills from the bitter struggle for their selfish, mean, and foolish satisfactions. So Mother says this struggle, this influence of the truth is needed if we want to shed life on the life of falsehood. And whatever little steps we can take, first of all beginning with our own self and then spilling it out around us, unknowingly or knowingly. To snatch them from this vortex which hides death. This vortex which hides death. Why death? Because if I know and live as the body, it is death for me, because the body has to die. So as if I'm plunged into this vortex of death. Insecurities, anxieties about the body, oh my God, what disease has happened to me? How long do I have to live? I don't know. Because I have known only myself as the body. So death will scare me. And then Mother says, behind its treacherous glitter, and then turn them towards thy conquering harmony. This is the supreme harmony, supreme immunity. Turning ourselves towards our own true self. Knowing and living ourselves as the true self in as deeper a realization possible in day-to-day life. And of course, there is a gap between knowing and living. Let there be the gap, but let us also take the baby steps in that direction. Saying no to all that is false, and hence saying yes to the truth. How do we reach the truth? By saying no to all that is false. Yeah? And there is supreme harmony in the being. So all the harmonization of the mind, the emotions, it happens automatically when I am able to say no to falsehood. Because more I'm seating myself as the truth. O Lord, eternal Master, enlighten us, guide our steps. Show us the way towards the realization of thy law, towards the accomplishment of thy work. I adore thee in silence, in listen to thee in a religious concentration. Religious concentration. This word religion has become too marred with our definitions of religion. It's a beautiful word, really. Religious. It means sincere. It means dedicated, devoted. A religious concentration. So all that we have heard of religion is not really religion. Religious is following my true dharma in life, following the dharma of truth in life. Saying no to falsehood is religion. That which we know usually as religion is not religion. Following my inner dharma is religion. Being sincere in noticing where is falsehood in my life is religion. So sincerity is equivalent to being religious in life. Honesty is being equivalent to religious in life. This is what is demanded of us. And this is our individual work. This is, for each one of us to become a flower so that the fragrance cannot be stopped to spread. And in our own unique ways, we are a flower. So this is the task, to say no to all that stops us from blossoming. That is all what is needed. Okay, the relationship is stopping me from blossoming. Okay, let me take the desired action, the required action. Okay, this limited role is stopping me from from blossoming. Let me take a step in the right direction. So we have to see all that is stopping the blossoming of my being and say no to that dictate. This is what is demanded, and the divine strength is with each one of us. So I can never say that if the divine is doing all, why do I care? I do care because the divine has given me this power of seeing. So I must care. Yeah, I think I have really said enough. Please, I'll just mute myself and share any further reflections. Yeah, Shilpi, you hadn't shared, and Shreya and others also are welcome to share.
Yes, I can go. So, I noticed something, and when I read the prayer, it just triggered this reflection in me. Today, I reached home only a little while before the call started, and the work that I had was like particularly tiring today. So I noticed myself reading the prayer and a sense of exhaustion rising, that especially the lines where the mother says no, that it's a mass of this rises and falls, and about tendencies she talks about, and like Monica said, Shan Bhangurta. Yes, yes, put into forms perpetually destroyed and renewed, and dissolved as soon as constituted, and of beings who imagine, and especially this thing is it feels particularly what do you say? It's like mother's it's like mother's charta on the face. Beings who imagine that they are conscient and permanent individualities, and who are as ephemeral as the birth, as the breath. So, and then she says, repeating indefinitely the same desires, same tendencies, same appetites. So, so it felt like, you know, you're being stripped of everything. And although at some level we know it, and on a more conscious level, we want to believe it, that yes, it is like that. I mean, I'm talking about myself. On some level, I know I must know it, and those things are accessible sometimes. But most of the times, I feel like when I read this thing, I kind of want to imbibe it. I want it to go deeper in me, but there is an effort there, no? So today, when I read it, I don't know what mother does with me. Every time I read the prayer, something different happens. But today, when I read it, I felt like a big sense of exhaustion rising again. That, okay, again the same thing, again the same thing. And at the same time, I I felt an enormous respect, and like falling at feet for somebody who could do this on and on and on endlessly. And they say each of mother's prayers is the same, and they say that only a fraction of what she wrote was published, and only a fraction of her life was captured in these things. So the enormity of it just feels very you know, it's just like you cannot do anything but you bow down to it. So yeah, and I also was noticing myself that is it because my physical body was so exhausted that my first reaction was the sense of exhaustion, and it was very interesting to see how my psyche kind of followed what I was feeling physically. Um, yeah, so that was the part that stood out for me. And also, some of the things that have been highlighted already also were very, very powerful for me. You know, when she talks about little wisdom, little knowledge, and disinterested faith was also very powerful. Disinterested faith, faith, and yet to me it feels like impersonal faith, faith, but not faith as a means to an end, you know, not the personal me keeping the faith, just faith, and heroism and compassion, and I think they also go hand in hand maybe. So yeah, it's a very beautiful prayer. Hmm. um, yeah, maybe I'll stop here and somebody else can go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shilpi. Thank you for sharing. That was beautiful. Yeah. Shreya, would you like to share?
I don't have much to say.
Okay. Okay. So you can say the less that you have. You said that you don't have much to say. Would you like to say the little that you have?
I think what I mean, the thought that is with me right now, actually, during the prayer when you were saying that you were talking about being stuck and not being stagnant, that what is stagnant rots. All of a sudden, the image of a tree came to me at that point. That trees are sort of immobile, not moving,
but they have deep roots and they give out fruits and flowers and shade, and they are really they have a lot of abundance. So I somehow, I mean, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I just at that moment it felt like some things that are sort of stagnant in a way, stuck, immobile, also have a beauty.
Beautiful, Shreya. I think beautiful that you raised this up. Now, for the example that we used for stagnancy was water. Now, it's not the nature of water to be stagnant, right? So it rots, right? It becomes not fit for drinking. But the thing that you raised, I think this is really beautiful, that a tree cannot be called as stagnant because a tree is a tree. You know, it is always rooted, and that's where the beauty of the tree is, that it is giving people, you know, it is giving space for the ants to be, you know, the roots are harboring so many other organisms, the branches have so many nests, and the leaves and the fruits, so it is alive, it is not really stagnant, it is alive. So with stagnance I did not mean just moving, in the sense being alive, right? And you are right, I think you touched on the beautiful chord, that even when you are not moving really per se, running, there can be a beauty in its own accord. So I'm glad that you touched it. Yeah, please share more if you have.
Yes, that.
Okay, okay, beautiful. Anyone else?
Yeah, Monica, I'll go.
Yeah.
When you were talking about, kind of craving, I don't know, not craving, but yearning for God, right? So once, I'd heard this somewhere that, when we look at the mystics, right? We look at, I don't know, a Surdas or a Tulsidas, and we see them crying, or Meera, right? We, a common man could think that, oh, what's the difference, right? Like I'm crying here and they are crying there. So what's the difference? But it was like, the suffering also is different type of suffering. So that suffering is actually very, I don't know, it's really auspicious because it actually takes you away from all those sufferings and takes you where the suffering ends. So when you were discussing that, I was, reminded of that. How beautiful is that suffering also, obviously, I mean, and it takes you towards something that would end it. Yeah.
But Taru, I heard somebody speak on it, and just take it with a grain of salt that it is true what you say, but at the same time, if mind latches onto it and says, I want to follow this path because at one day this longing for God will trump all other longings in me, and I will just feel, it'll be, I'll sort of be home, then the
Mm.
mind is still moving with an intention, and that is, um, like that can be defeating at some point. So at some point, this also probably needs to be let go. Like nothing else remains, just the longing or just the
Mm.
love, just the love remains, and just even this understanding that this is this burns all other, or it's more pious also will probably, I think it's a natural process that also probably just goes away. Just sharing because I heard it from someone.
Yeah, yeah. Actually would hope that it's a natural process, that, it's like once you start, even if it is with a selfish agenda, that I would want to lose this, because, you do need some motivation. So I'm sure that, with grace, you would move ahead. Yeah, but it's definitely thanks for sharing. And one more thing, when Mother was saying about, again, like the type of sufferings and stuff that we go through, there's a Doha of Surdas ji. I remember once my dad had got a calendar printed, I don't know, 10 years back or something. There was this Doha that I was reminded of. We have time? Okay, so I'll quickly just go through that. It said that Man toko kiti kahi samjhai, नंद नंदन के चरण कमल भज, छार पखंड चतुराई, जन्मत मरत बहुत जुग बीते, अबहु लाज न आई, सूरदास भगवंत भजन बिन, जेहे जन्म गवाई. So yeah, that's about it. Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. This talk of longing that we did, the discussion about longing or yearning. So I think I would agree that longing is not supposed to be a means to an end. Again, when longing also happens in a being, it is a happening. You did not plan the longing to be there. It just happened. And just like surrender, the path of surrender, we say that the path is the goal itself. There is no other goal than longing. There is no other goal than surrender. Keep on surrendering, keep on surrendering. And even knowing that the surrender will forever be incomplete, the path itself is so joyous that I don't want to do anything else in the world than this. That each opportunity that life gives me to surrender, I would do it. I would do it. Why? Because that is the worthy path. I don't see anything worthy in life worth doing. So if I can use the word doing, so I think that is where I would take it, because the lives that we, for example, in our individual lives we have started to live, or the things that we are aspiring for, they are there because we don't find anything else worthy in life. Not, no no material stuff, so called, uh, calls me so much, so deeply as this path. And that is why we are here by so called happenings of our life, which have led us here, right? So there is hardly, first of all, any choice, I would say. These are just happenings and they led us here. If not for those happenings, maybe we were somewhere else, right? And maybe that was another path. And another thing I also see, for again talking from my own experience, that uh, I don't see this craving for the divine in me personally. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I should have the craving, because I feel that the life that I am living right now, even what little I am able to manage in my day to day life, I think that itself is such a grace and such. I feel so blessed to live this life that I don't want the divine if divine is further away in future. I am so grateful every day that thank God for another good day, for example. Even that good day would be marred with many, many other things. But even then, just to be alive itself is such a blessing that why would I crave for anything else, in future? So yeah, I don't know where that was coming from. So just wanted to share that. Yeah. So anything else, or shall we call it a day?
This is a natural thing, no? That longing is a natural thing. No? Yeah, it is a happening. It is not. You cannot create that longing.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else? Any lasting comments?
Yeah, my prayer. You allotted a prayer to me, no, Monica. I will go
Oh,
through
I
it.
forgot.
Next week we will see.
Yes, please share.
because the time you see the time
No,
you.
so those of us who want to leave, they can leave, but I am here. Yeah, please. What day was that? Please remind me.
Yeah, that this March 29th, 1914. It's
Oh,
small prayer only. Yeah.
1914.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Pondicherry, March 29th, 1914. O thou whom we must know, understand, realize, absolute consciousness, eternal law, thou who guidest and illuminest us, who movest and inspirest us, grant that these weak souls may be strengthened, and those who fear be reassured. To thee I entrust them, even as I entrust to thee our entire destiny. Yeah, when I go through this prayer, first of all, I thank for these sessions actually, because these sessions are making me to go deeper into these prayers and meditations. So far I used to read, but according to dates, sometimes I will take one prayer and read, and definitely I will concentrate upon the lines, and some inner joy I will get, sometimes answers also. Then I prostrate before the picture, as she said, pictures of Mother and Sri Aurobindo and how great they are. I used to feel like that. But now I find new revelations. That is not only for that inner life, but also the outer life also resonating with these prayers actually. So when I read this prayer, I try to go deeper about these lines. Actually, Mother mentioned, know, understand, realize. So this I find, first, it's in ascending order. First you know, then you understand, then you realize. Something beautiful I found actually, and about that absolute consciousness and eternal law. And again, she's putting the words like that: who guide us and illumine us, who move us and inspire us. These are all like step by step guiding us. Actually, I felt like that. And definitely that grant that these weak souls may be strengthened. And when I go through these lines, I really found it happened to me every time when I feel very weak and that nasty fear rests upon me, And however, with the total compassion and grace of Mother, she will definitely raise me up every time. And also the spell also very, very much, reduced nowadays actually, after all these sessions and going through all these prayers and meditations. Mother's grace I can feel really. And also when she's telling, no, when she entrusted us to Sri Aurobindo's compassion, this is a sort of prayer towards, it seems like that, no, towards Sri Aurobindo. So she is entrusting us, towards him. Even our whole destiny is entrusted to Sri Aurobindo and Mother. I felt like that. So it is really, it is reassured again, as she mentioned, reassured, yeah. And also I found some, lines from Savitri in one of the journal for this prayer. Savitri, page number 15, actually. Deep of compassion, hushed sanctuary, her inward help unbarred a gate in heaven. Those lines, no? Actually, this is the really her compassion. Again and again, it's coming to me. Even whenever I read all prayers and meditations, it is a total compassion towards us. So again, I felt that, and actually, yeah, these are the things I want to share. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chitraji. Anyone wants to share on what Chitraji shared? This prayer? I've shared the 2 lines from Savitri, which Chitraji was sharing in the chat window. If those of us who want to have a look, yeah, beautiful. Yeah. This is really beautiful. The line that you shared, Chitraji, her inward help unbarred a gate in heaven. As if some revelation happens in the being in that moment. When we are able to receive this help. Yeah. Revelation towards heaven. Again, we can talk about this for hours. I think. What do we call really heaven? What is the meaning of heaven? What does heaven signify? That can be really taken up in this regard. The richness, inner fulfillment, contentment, all that can be equated with heaven. Because whenever we talk of heaven, we talk about riches, like we talk about we have everything that we want. So that would be heaven, where there is a contentment in the being. Yeah.
You also mentioned, no, the last prayer also you mentioned about that heaven, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So, in absence of any comments, if there are any comments, please unmute yourself and share. In absence, we can just close the session here with this prayer. All right. Great. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yes, Shreya, please.
I want to understand these two lines more. A deep of compassion, a hushed sanctuary.
Yeah.
I mean, we can take it up later also if there's not enough time right now.
Yeah.
I don't think I truly understand the depth of
Okay.
these two lines.
Okay. Chitraji, would you like to share?
The in the sanctuary and heaven, everything for me, it is our that inner contentment and inner attitude. No, actually, deep of compassion, hushed sanctuary. It really take you inside. No, actually, yeah.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
inner
Chitraji.
divinity, yeah, inner divinity.
Yes. So, Shreya, these lines from Savitri are talking about, for example, when there are reflections, there are descriptions about Savitri or the mother in the book. It
Yeah.
is a reflection that whenever anybody went to her, she was always full of compassion, and one could confide in her. So that's our divine mother. And even if you don't want to, people who are not really connected with the mother, so even I think they can also reach this inner space where there's this inner contentment, inner hushed safe space where you can confide everything. So you're talking to your own higher self, and the higher self is deeply compassionate, a deep of compassion, a hushed sanctuary. So as if it is able to take all your gila shikwas, all the sufferings, all the complaints that you talk, take deeper in the being. Her inward help, and when we begin to have this connection inwardly with the mother or the divine presence within the being, when we talk to that divine presence within the being, when we, share everything with that divine presence, her inward help unbarred a gate in heaven. Then we begin to find our resolutions also. Then we always have ways in our life. So, for example, I may be feeling stuck and I write this in my diary, or I talk to the mother, mother, I am feeling stuck. I want to find a resolution there. So, you can confide in that space, a hushed sanctuary. There's not much noise there. It's a very safe space for sharing. No one is judging you there. You can share all your badness and ugliness with the mother, and then something gets revealed to you. So, unbarred a gate in heaven, something gets opened up in your life, and you are able to walk your way through whatever challenge you were facing. So, that is how, a few words there I would go about. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay. And anything else? Okay, great. Then thank you everyone for sharing your reflections. Thank you for being there and
Thank you.
joining.
Yeah.
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 Thank you, Chitra.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks, everyone. Yeah. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Very nice. Yeah.